My husband Don recently got out of prison, and we're working at putting our lives back together. We don't have a car yet, and my husband doesn't have his driver's license. He got me some nice Christmas presents, but one of the sweaters was too small, so we went on the bus to the store to make an exchange. For some reason, the clerk at the customer service center asked Don for his driver's license, and when he said he didn't have one, she said he could use mine. So he asked me for mine, but when I told him I'd left mine at home, out of the blue he just blew up and snapped at me. "Why didn't you bring your license?" I tried to explain that I didn't know that I needed it, and that it wasn't my fault, but he just got even angrier. I do not understand why he blew up at me when none of this was my fault. And then why would he get even angrier when I was just answering his question?
Most of us are confused our entire lives by interactions like the one you just described with Don. And because we don't understand them, we react poorly to them and keep having them over and over again. After a while, it gets kind of frustrating, doesn't it? It's especially confusing because on the surface, you're quite right. What he did doesn't seem to make any sense. Now, some of it makes a little sense. The lady at the customer service counter asked him for his license, and when he didn't have one, that might have meant that he'd have to go all the way home to get some form of identification. That would have been very inconvenient, and that's often enough to make people get irritated. But you still don't have the whole picture. He then turned to you and asked if you had your license, and when you didn't, then he really blew up. And because he blew up at you, and because he said, "Why didn't you bring your license?" you thought, naturally, it was all about you. Understandable that you would, since he was making it all about you. But remember something. When people are angry, they are almost uniformly afraid. And when people are afraid, they don't see clearly or think clearly, which means they become blind and stupid. And I mean really blind and stupid. So when a blind and stupid person tells you that something is your fault, you might want to consider that they could be wrong. And he was wrong to make it your fault. He was acting out of fear. What was he afraid of? He just got out of prison, where people are routinely treated like they are worthless, where they are told every day that they are nothing. And then they get out of prison, but still they're certain that everywhere they go, and I mean everywhere, people are looking at them, looking down on them, laughing at them, criticizing them, thinking of them as worthless ex-convicts. And they have reason to think that, because people really do treat ex-cons differently. I've worked a lot with convicts and ex-cons, and I've been with them as they've applied for jobs and been turned down over and over again. They serve their time in prison, and then when they get out, they keep serving their time in a different kind of prison, constantly being reminded in so many ways that they're less than everybody else. After spending a lot of time with many of them, I can tell you it's very humiliating for them. So here Don stands before this clerk, being reminded by her once again that he's a loser because he doesn't have a driver's license. So he turns to you to rescue him, hoping that you have a license with you, but you don't. So now there's no escape for him. Once again, he's been labeled a loser. For him, it's almost like the clerk has put a billboard on his head with loser on it in flashing lights. Or it's like she's picked up that little microphone, you know, that broadcasts all over the store, and she's saying, "Attention shoppers, we have a man here at the customer service counter who just got out of prison. He is such a loser that he doesn't even have a driver's license." Anybody interested, by the way, in seeing a real loser in person, please come to the customer service counter immediately. That's how bad he felt. So he felt ashamed and afraid, and when you couldn't save him from the situation, he became angry. Why? Because when we get angry, we feel less helpless and afraid. We get a little of our power back. In order to feel less helpless, he needed to get angry at somebody, and it was much safer to get angry at you. If he'd gotten angry at the clerk, she might have called the cops. And a man fresh out of prison, still on parole, cannot afford that. So now you understand why you became angry. In our next session, we'll talk about what else went wrong and what you could do differently in a similar situation in the future.